I still remember the exact moment my life changed. And the crazy thing is that it happened on a completely normal Tuesday afternoon. At least, I thought it was normal. I was 34 years old, living in a modest house outside Columbus, Ohio. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I worked as a maintenance supervisor for a manufacturing company, paid my bills on time, and enjoyed the quiet routine I had built for myself. After years of struggling financially in my 20s, stability felt like a luxury. My sister Melissa had always been the opposite of me. She chased excitement, new relationships, new cities, new jobs, new dreams. Every year, there seemed to be some new adventure she was pursuing. Sometimes it worked out. Most of the time it didn't. Growing up, our parents used to joke that I was the responsible one, while Melissa was the free spirit. Back then it sounded harmless. As adults, it became a problem. Melissa had 2 children, Emma and Noah. Emma was 10 years old, and Noah had just turned 8. They were good kids, sweet kids. The problem wasn't them. The problem was their mother. Over the years, Melissa had developed a habit of disappearing whenever life became difficult. She'd leave the kids with friends, neighbors, babysitters, and occasionally with me. Usually it lasted a weekend, sometimes a week. Then she'd come back with a dramatic story about why she had needed a break. I hated it, but I loved my niece and nephew, so I always helped. That Tuesday afternoon, she called me and asked if she could stop by. Her voice sounded strangely cheerful. Sure, I said. About an hour later, her SUV pulled into my driveway. Emma and Noah climbed out first, carrying backpacks. Then I noticed something strange. The back of the SUV was packed. Suitcases, boxes, garbage, bags filled with clothes. At first, I assumed she was moving apartments again. Melissa walked up the driveway wearing sunglasses and smiling. "Can we talk inside?" she asked. Something immediately felt wrong. We sat in my kitchen while the kids watched television in the living room. Melissa removed her sunglasses and took a deep breath. "I'm leaving." I stared at her. "Leaving where?" "Europe." I laughed. I honestly thought she was joking. She didn't laugh back. "I'm serious." The smile on my face disappeared. "What do you mean, Europe?" She leaned back in her chair. "I met someone." Of course she did. There was always someone. Apparently, she'd been talking online with a man from Spain for 8 months. They had decided they were soulmates. I wish I were making this up. She planned to move overseas and start a new life. I rubbed my forehead. "What about Emma and Noah?" The answer came so casually that it still makes me angry when I think about it. "They're staying with you." I blinked. "No, they're not." She smiled like I was being unreasonable. "Come on, Jake. You're great with them." She was asking me to watch them temporarily. Maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. Then she delivered the sentence that shattered everything. "I'll take them back when they're 18. For a few seconds, I genuinely couldn't process what I had heard. I just stared at her. The kitchen suddenly felt silent. "You'll what?" "I'll take them back once they're adults." I waited for her to laugh. She didn't. I realized she was serious. Completely serious. "Melissa, they're children." "No. They need a parent. They have one." I pointed at myself. "I'm their uncle." She shrugged. "Close enough." To this day, I have never heard anything more selfish come out of another human being's mouth. I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over. "Absolutely not." The smile disappeared from her face. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean? They're your kids." She rolled her eyes. "You always make everything dramatic." Dramatic. As if abandoning your children for a different continent was a minor inconvenience. The argument lasted almost an hour. I told her she was out of her mind. She accused me of being judgmental. I told her she couldn't just dump 2 children on me. She insisted I owed her because she was family. Eventually, she stood up and grabbed her purse. "I knew you'd make this difficult." I followed her to the front door. "Melissa, you're not leaving those kids here." She opened the door. "Watch me." Then she walked outside. At first, I thought she was trying to scare me. I expected her to cool off and come back. Instead, she loaded the last suitcase into her SUV. The kids came running outside. Emma looked confused. "Mom?" Melissa hugged them both for about 30 seconds. Then she got into her vehicle. No tears, no hesitation, no sign of guilt. Just a quick goodbye. She rolled down her window. "I'll call when I get settled." Then she drove away. I stood in my driveway with 2 confused children watching their mother disappear around the corner. That was the last time we saw her for nearly 6 years. The first few weeks were chaos. The kids kept asking questions I couldn't answer. "When is mom coming back? Why did she leave? Did we do something wrong?" Those questions broke my heart every single time, because the truth was ugly. Their mother had chosen herself, and children should never have to hear that. So I lied. Not maliciously. I just tried to protect them. I told them their mother was dealing with complicated issues and needed time. I told them she loved them. I wasn't even sure that part was true anymore. Bills started piling up almost immediately. 2 extra mouths to feed. School expenses, clothes, medical appointments. everything. My savings account began shrinking fast. I hadn't planned to raise children. I hadn't prepared financially or emotionally. Some nights, I sat alone in my bedroom staring at spreadsheets, wondering how I was going to make it work. I considered contacting social services. I considered trying to locate their father, who had disappeared years earlier. I considered a lot of things. But every time I looked at Emma and Noah, I knew I couldn't walk away. Someone already had. They didn't deserve another person abandoning them. 3 months after Melissa left, I filed for legal guardianship. The process was exhausting. Court hearings, paperwork, lawyers, investigators. I spent thousands of dollars I couldn't afford. Melissa ignored every attempt to contact her. Emails went unanswered. Phone numbers changed. Social media accounts disappeared. It was like she had erased herself. Eventually, the court granted me temporary guardianship. A year later, it became permanent. Just like that, I went from being an uncle to being the closest thing those kids had to a father. The adjustment wasn't easy. I burned dinners, forgot school forms, missed parent-teacher emails, accidentally bought Emma boy sneakers once because I was rushing through a store after work. She laughed about it for weeks. Little by little, though, we figured things out. We became a family. Not the family any of us expected, but a family nonetheless. Every morning, packed lunches before work. Every evening I helped with homework. Every weekend we tackled life together. There were struggles, a lot of struggles, but there were victories too. The first time Noah made the honor roll. The day Emma won her school spelling competition. Movie nights on the couch. Road trips during summer vacations. Birthday cakes that leaned sideways because I couldn't bake. Those moments mattered, because despite everything Melissa had done, those kids were growing up surrounded by someone who actually wanted them, and that made all the difference. What I didn't know was that the hardest years were still ahead of us. And one day, after disappearing for years, Melissa was going to come back. Not because she missed her children, not because she regretted abandoning them. She came back for a reason. So selfish that even now it sounds unbelievable. And when she finally showed up at my door again, everything changed. The first 2 years after Melissa disappeared felt like I was running a marathon with a backpack full of bricks strapped to my shoulders. Every day started before sunrise and ended long after. I was exhausted. I would wake up at 5 in the morning, make breakfast, prepare lunches, get the kids ready for school, rush to work, spend 10 hours handling maintenance emergencies, then race home to help with homework, cook dinner, clean the house, and somehow find enough energy to do it all again the next day. There were nights when I collapsed onto the couch and fell asleep before the television even finished loading. I wasn't living, I was surviving. But strangely enough, the kids were what kept me moving. Whenever I felt like giving up, I'd see Emma working hard on a school project, or Noah proudly showing me a drawing he had made, and something inside me would keep going. They deserved stability. They deserved someone who stayed. One evening, about a year and a half after Melissa left, I overheard a conversation that broke my heart. Emma and Noah were sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while I washed dishes. They thought I couldn't hear them. "Do you think Mom forgot about us?" Noah asked quietly. The room went silent. I stopped scrubbing the plate in my hands. Emma didn't answer immediately. She was older, old enough to understand things children shouldn't have to understand. Finally she spoke. "No," her voice sounded uncertain. "Then why doesn't she call?" That question hit me like a punch to the chest. I stood frozen at the sink. A few seconds passed. Then Emma gave the kind of answer only a child forced to grow up too fast could give. "Because some people only think about themselves." I had to turn away, because my eyes were suddenly burning. No 10-year-old should have that level of understanding, but life had taught her lessons she never should have needed to learn. As time passed, the kids slowly stopped asking about Melissa. At first, that seemed like progress. Then I realized it was something sadder. They weren't healing. They were adapting. There was a difference. Eventually, people stop expecting someone to come back. Not because the pain disappears, because hope becomes too exhausting. By the 3rd year, our little household had settled into a routine. We weren't rich. Far from it. Money remained tight. I stopped taking vacations. I delayed repairs on my own house. I wore work boots until they practically fell apart. Every extra dollar went toward the kids. School supplies, sports fees, field trips, medical bills, whatever they needed. I remember one particular Christmas that still sticks with me. Work had been slow that year. Unexpected expenses had drained my savings. I barely had enough money to cover gifts. A week before Christmas, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my bank account and trying to figure out how I was going to make everything work. Emma noticed. She was 13 by then. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Nothing." She looked at the computer screen. Then she understood. Kids notice more than adults think. The next morning, I found a handwritten note taped to the refrigerator. It read, "Please don't spend a lot on me for Christmas. I already have everything I need." I had to sit down after reading it, because I knew exactly why she wrote it. She wasn't trying to be mature. She was trying to help. A child was worrying about the household budget. That should never happen. I quietly folded the note and kept it. Years later, still have it stored in a drawer. Not because it makes me sad, because it reminds me how incredible those kids became despite everything they endured. When Emma turned 14 and Noah turned 12, another challenge appeared. Teenage anger. And honestly, they had every right to be angry. Their mother had abandoned them. Their father was nowhere to be found. Life wasn't fair. Sometimes that anger landed on me. There were slammed doors, arguments, harsh words spoken during emotional moments. One night, Noah exploded during dinner. I didn't ask for this. The second the words left his mouth, he looked shocked, like he immediately regretted them. The room fell silent. I could see tears forming in his eyes. He pushed away from the table. "I'm sorry." Then he ran upstairs. I found him sitting on his bed 20 minutes later. He looked miserable. "I didn't mean it." "I know." "No, you don't." His voice cracked. "I hate her." There it was. The truth. Raw and painful. Years of hurt finally spilling out. "I hate that she left." I sat beside him. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then I put my hand on his shoulder. "You have every right to be angry." He stared at the floor. Why wasn't I enough? That question nearly destroyed me, because no abandoned child is really asking about their parent. They're asking about themselves. What's wrong with me? Why wasn't I worth staying for? I looked him directly in the eyes. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you, but she left because she made a selfish choice. He wiped his face. I continued. "Her decision says everything about her and nothing about you." I don't know if those words fixed anything. Probably not. Some wounds don't heal that quickly, but I needed him to hear them, because children shouldn't carry responsibility for their parents' failures. Around the 5th year, I finally started improving financially. I received a promotion at work. The raise wasn't enormous, but it helped. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly panicking about money. We replaced our aging refrigerator, fixed the leaking roof, even took a short family vacation to Florida. Watching Emma and Noah run along the beach felt like seeing sunlight after a storm. For a few days we laughed, relaxed, forgot about old wounds. Those moments reminded me that despite everything, we were building a real life together, a good life. Then something happened that changed how I viewed myself. One afternoon, Emma had an assignment at school. Students were asked to write about the person they admired most. That evening, she handed me the paper. "Read it." I expected something simple, maybe a paragraph. Instead, I found 300 pages. The essay wasn't about a celebrity, or an athlete, or a historical figure. It was about me. She wrote about how I never left, how I worked long hours, but still attended school events, how I learned to braid hair by watching online tutorials because she wanted different hairstyles, how I stayed up all night when she got sick, how I showed up every single day. Halfway through reading it, I couldn't continue. My vision had blurred. I looked up. Emma was watching me nervously. "Was it bad?" I laughed through tears. "No." My voice cracked. "It was perfect." That essay remains one of the most valuable things I own. Not because it praised me, because it confirmed something I had spent years doubting. I was doing okay. Not perfectly, but okay. Then came year 6. The year everything changed. It started on an ordinary Saturday morning. No warning, no build-up, no indication of what was coming. I was mowing the lawn while Noah helped trim bushes. Emma was inside finishing homework. The day felt completely normal. Then a black SUV pulled into my driveway. I shut off the mower. At first, I assumed someone was lost. The vehicle parked. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. 6 years can change a person. Then reality hit me. Melissa, my sister, the woman who had abandoned her children, the woman who vanished without a trace, the woman who had ignored every birthday, every holiday, every school achievement, every nightmare, every tear. She was standing in my driveway like she had simply gone away for the weekend. My stomach tightened instantly. Noah froze beside me. The expression on his face shifted from confusion to disbelief. The front door opened. Emma stepped outside. The second she saw Melissa, all color drained from her face. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence felt heavy enough to crush the entire neighborhood. Finally, Melissa smiled. Actually smiled. "Wow," she said. "They've gotten so big." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 6 years of absence. And that was her opening line. But what she said next was even worse. Much worse. Because it revealed exactly why she had come back after all those years. And it had nothing to do with love. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. The summer air felt strangely still. Melissa stood near her SUV, smiling awkwardly, as if she expected some emotional family reunion, as if 6 years had simply disappeared, as if she hadn't walked away from 2 children and left someone else to pick up the pieces. Emma stood frozen on the porch. Noah's face had gone completely blank. I knew that expression. It was the look people get when reality doesn't match what their brain expects. Melissa took a few steps forward. "Well," she said, with a nervous laugh, "aren't you guys going to say hi?" Neither child moved. Neither child smiled. Neither child ran toward her. The silence stretched so long that even Melissa started looking uncomfortable. Good. She deserved to feel uncomfortable. She deserved far worse. Finally, Emma spoke. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Why are you here?" Melissa blinked. Apparently, she hadn't expected that reaction. "I wanted to see my kids." My kids. The words irritated me immediately. For 6 years, she hadn't acted like their mother. Now suddenly, they were her kids again. Emma crossed her arms. "You remembered us?" The question landed like a slap. Melissa's smile faded. "Of course, I remembered you." Noah finally spoke. "Then why didn't you call?" Another silence. A painful one. Melissa looked toward me like she expected help. She wasn't getting any. She created this mess. She could deal with it herself. "I was busy," she said. "Busy. 6 years. Busy." I honestly thought my head might explode. Noah laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone discovering exactly who another person really is. 6 years busy? Melissa shifted uncomfortably. "I had a lot going on." Emma shook her head. "No, you left." The truth sounded brutal because it was brutal. Melissa opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You don't understand." That was when Emma delivered a sentence. "I'll never forget." "We understand perfectly." Melissa looked genuinely shocked. I think she had spent years imagining that the kids would stay frozen in time, that they'd remain the same confused children she abandoned. But life doesn't work that way. Children grow. Children learn. Children remember. And these children had learned exactly who stayed and who left. The conversation became increasingly uncomfortable. Melissa asked questions about school, sports, friends, grades. The kids answered politely, but that's all it was. Politeness. There was no warmth, no connection, no relationship. Because relationships require effort. They require time. You can't disappear for 6 years and expect everything to remain intact. Eventually, I stepped forward. "What do you actually want?" Melissa looked annoyed. "I told you." "Oh," I shook my head. "What do you really want?" For a moment she said nothing. Then she sighed. And finally, the truth started coming out. Over the next 20 minutes, I learned exactly what had happened. Her great European love story had fallen apart years earlier. The man she moved overseas for had eventually left her. After that, she'd bounced between jobs and relationships. Country after country, city after city, always chasing the next opportunity, always searching for happiness, always running from responsibility. And now, she was back in the United States, broke, divorced, alone. Suddenly, her timing made a lot more sense. This wasn't a mother returning because she missed her children. This was a woman who had run out of options. Then she delivered the real reason for her visit. The reason that made my blood boil. "I think it's time the kids came back with me." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. "You what?" Melissa looked completely serious. "They're older now." Emma was 16. Noah was 14. She had missed almost their entire childhood. And now, she wanted them back? Just like that? Like checking out library books? I stared at her. "You're joking. I'm their mother." The entitlement in her voice was unbelievable. 6 years of silence. 6 years of birthdays missed. 6 years of school plays. Report cards. Christmas mornings. Scraped knees. Heartbreaks. Celebrations. And milestones. Now suddenly she wanted custody. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was absurd. "You abandoned them." "I needed time." "You vanished." "I was figuring out my life." I pointed toward Emma and Noah. They were children. Melissa rolled her eyes. That gesture alone nearly pushed me over the edge. I said I made mistakes. Mistakes. Forgetting someone's birthday is a mistake. Taking a wrong turn is a mistake. Abandoning your children for 6 years is a choice. A selfish one. The kids stood quietly during the argument, watching, listening, processing. Then Melissa turned toward them. "Pack your things." Nobody moved. Emma looked at her like she was a stranger, because in many ways she was. "You think we're leaving?" Melissa frowned. "I'm your mother." "No." Emma's voice silence remained steady. "You're the woman who gave birth to us." The silence afterward felt enormous. Melissa looked stunned. Noah nodded. "Jake's the one who raised us." For the first time all afternoon, Melissa seemed genuinely hurt. But honestly, it wasn't even 1% of what those kids had experienced. She took a deep breath. "You've poisoned them against me." There it was. The accusation every irresponsible parent eventually makes. Nothing is ever their fault. It's always someone else's influence. I folded my arms. "I spent 6 years covering for you." "What?" When they cried, I defended you. Melissa looked confused. I continued. "When they asked where you were, I made excuses." Emma looked surprised. She didn't know that. Neither did Noah. "I spent years trying to protect your image." I shook my head. "You did this yourself." The truth finally hung in the air where everyone could see it. Melissa wasn't dealing with brainwashing. She was dealing with consequences. Actions have consequences. Even years later, especially years later, the argument continued for another hour. At one point, Melissa threatened legal action. That almost made me laugh again, because she clearly hadn't done her homework. Years earlier, the courts had granted me permanent guardianship after she disappeared and failed to respond to multiple notices. Legally speaking, her position wasn't nearly as strong as she imagined. When I explained that, her confidence vanished. The realization hit her hard. She wasn't in control anymore. For once, she couldn't simply walk away and return whenever it suited her. The children she abandoned had grown up. The situation had changed. Life had moved forward without her. Eventually she left. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just frustrated. She climbed into her SUV and drove away. The same way she'd driven away 6 years earlier. Only this time nobody chased after her. Nobody cried. Nobody begged her to stay. After she disappeared down the street, we went back inside. The house felt strangely quiet. The three of us sat around the kitchen table. Nobody knew what to say. Finally, Noah broke the silence. "That was weird." We all laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes laughter is easier than crying. A few minutes later Emma looked at me. "You really defended her all those years?" I nodded. "Why?" The answer came easily. "Because you were kids." Her eyes filled with tears. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then she stood up and hugged me. A second later, Noah joined. The three of us stood there in the kitchen, holding each other. And for the first time in years, I realized something important. We weren't surviving anymore. We had become a family, a real one, not because of blood, because of commitment, because of sacrifice, because of love. But Melissa wasn't finished causing problems. Not even close. A month later, she would make a decision so selfish and desperate that it would drag all of us into a legal battle, and that battle would finally expose the real reason. She had come back after 6 years, a reason that had absolutely nothing to do with being a mother. For about 3 weeks after Melissa's visit, life returned to normal, at least on the surface. I went to work. Emma went to school. Noah complained about homework. We watched movies on Friday nights and argued over what toppings belonged on pizza. Everything looked normal, but underneath that normal routine, something had changed. Melissa's sudden return had reopened wounds that had never fully healed. I noticed it in small ways. Emma became quieter. Noah started asking questions about the past, questions he hadn't asked in years. One night while we were eating dinner, he put down his fork and looked at me. "Did she ever try contacting us before now?" The room became silent. I considered lying, not because I wanted to deceive him, because I wanted to protect him. But he was 14 now, old enough for honesty. I shook my head. "No." His jaw tightened. That answer hurt more than any complicated explanation could have. Because sometimes the truth is brutally simple. She didn't call because she didn't want to. She didn't write because she didn't care enough to. She didn't visit because something else always mattered more. Noah nodded slowly and returned to eating. But I could tell he was fighting disappointment. The hardest part about abandonment isn't the leaving. It's realizing, years later, that the person kept choosing not to come back. A few days after that conversation, a certified letter arrived in my mailbox. The second I saw the sender's name, my stomach dropped. Melissa. I opened it at the kitchen table. By the time I finished reading, I was furious. She was petitioning the court. She wanted her parental rights restored. She wanted custody. She wanted the children returned to her care. After 6 years. 6 years. I read the document twice because I genuinely couldn't believe it. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. The woman who missed 6 birthdays, 6 Christmases, 6 years of school events, 6 years of everyday life, suddenly wanted to play mother again. When Emma came home from school, she immediately noticed my expression. What happened? I handed her the papers. A few minutes later, Noah was reading them too. Neither of them looked surprised. That was what shocked me. They weren't angry. They weren't emotional. They just looked tired. Like they'd expected something like this. Emma folded the papers and placed them on the table. "We're not going." Simple. Direct. Certain. I looked at her. You don't have to decide right now. I already decided. Noah nodded. Me too. For a moment, I felt proud. Not because they chose me, because they understood their own worth. Children who have been abandoned often spend years craving approval from the person who left. Emma and Noah had reached a different place. They finally understood that love isn't proven through words. It's proven through actions. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 months later. Those 2 months felt longer than the previous 6 years. Melissa suddenly became very interested in being a mother. Imagine that. For 6 years she couldn't make a phone call. Now, she was sending messages constantly. Birthday cards, emails, social media requests, letters. The effort would have been impressive if it hadn't arrived 6 years too late. At first, the kids ignored everything. Then one afternoon, Emma received a long message from Melissa. After reading it, she handed me her phone. I expected an apology. I expected regret. I expected some acknowledgement of the damage she'd caused. Instead, the message was mostly about Melissa, her struggles, her sacrifices, her difficult journey, her emotional pain. 3 full pages explaining why abandoning her children had been hard on her. I couldn't believe it. Even now, she viewed herself as the victim. Emma looked at me. Am I a terrible person? The question caught me off guard. Why would you ask that? She stared toward the window. Because I don't feel anything anymore. My heart sank. She wasn't talking about anger. She wasn't talking about sadness. She meant something worse. Indifference. The emotional bond was gone. Completely gone. I think I stopped having a mother years ago. There wasn't really anything I could say. Because she was telling the truth. Not a cruel truth. Just a sad one. The hearing finally arrived on a rainy Monday morning. I barely slept the night before. Not because I was worried about losing. Legally, Melissa's case was weak. I was worried about what the process would do to the kids emotionally. Courtrooms have a way of turning personal pain into paperwork. Turning heartbreak into legal arguments. Turning families into case numbers. And that's exactly what happened. The courtroom itself wasn't large. Just a quiet room filled with attorneys, paperwork, and tension. Melissa arrived, looking polished and confident. You would never have guessed she disappeared for 6 years. She smiled at the kids when she entered. Neither smiled back. That seemed to bother her. Good. The hearing lasted several hours. Her attorney argued that Melissa had matured, that she'd rebuilt her life, that she wanted another chance. Then our attorney stood up, and reality entered the room. Phone records, financial records, years of silence, missed child support, ignored notices, unanswered legal documents, evidence after evidence, fact after fact. The picture became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a temporary absence. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was abandonment. Then came the moment nobody expected. The judge asked if Emma wanted to speak. At 16, she was old enough for her opinion to carry significant weight. The courtroom became completely silent. Emma stood. For a second, she looked nervous. Then she found her voice, and what she said left the entire room speechless. She didn't attack Melissa. She didn't insult her. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she told the truth. She described birthdays spent wondering if her mother would call, Christmas mornings without messages, school events with empty seats, years of waiting, years of disappointment. Then she said something I'll never forget. My uncle never promised us forever. The judge listened carefully. Emma continued. He just stayed. The room felt motionless. Even Melissa looked stunned. Tears had started forming in Emma's eyes. He didn't leave when things got difficult. She glanced toward me. He didn't leave when money was tight. More tears. He didn't leave when we were angry. The silence became overwhelming. Then she delivered the sentence that changed everything. He's the reason we know what family actually means. I couldn't look at her anymore. My vision had blurred. Across the room, even Noah was wiping his eyes. The judge thanked her and allowed her to sit down. A few minutes later, Noah spoke too. His statement was shorter, but somehow even more powerful. If she wanted to be our mother, she had 6 years. That was it. One sentence. One devastating sentence. And nobody in the courtroom could argue with it. Not even Melissa. The hearing ended shortly afterward. The judge announced that a decision would be issued soon. We left emotionally exhausted, but something felt different. For the first time, the kids had spoken their truth openly. No hiding, no pretending, no protecting anyone. Just honesty. A week later, the ruling arrived. Melissa's petition was denied. Completely. The judge cited abandonment, lack of involvement, and the children's clear wishes. Legally speaking, the matter was settled. Or at least I thought it was. Because 2 days after the ruling, someone I didn't recognize contacted me. A man, middle-aged, professional, nervous. He claimed he had information about Melissa, information I needed to hear. At first, I assumed it was nonsense. Then he revealed something that made my blood run cold. The real reason Melissa wanted custody wasn't because she missed her children. It wasn't because she loved them. It wasn't because she regretted leaving. There was money involved. A lot of money. And once I learned the full story, I finally understood why she had suddenly reappeared after 6 years of silence. The truth was uglier than anything I had imagined. When the man first called me, I almost hung up. In the years since Melissa disappeared, I'd received my share of strange phone calls. Most were scams. Some were people trying to track her down over unpaid debts. A few were former friends asking if I knew where she was. Nothing good ever came from a call that started with, "You don't know me, but we need to talk." This one was different. The man's name was Richard. His voice sounded tense, like someone carrying information they weren't comfortable holding. "I worked with your sister," he said. "Okay, there's something you should know." I leaned back in my chair. "What exactly?" A long silence followed. Then he said the words that changed everything. "She isn't trying to get the kids back, because she misses them. I figured that out already." "No," his voice lowered. "You don't understand." A strange feeling settled in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" Another pause. Then Richard explained. A few years after moving back to the United States, Melissa had married a wealthy businessman. The marriage hadn't lasted. In fact, it ended badly. Very badly. The divorce had become ugly and expensive. Lawyers got involved. Assets were divided. Accusations flew in every direction. By itself, none of that mattered to me. People get divorced every day. Then Richard explained the part that did matter. Apparently, Melissa had been trying to present herself as a devoted mother during portions of the legal proceedings. A woman unfairly separated from her children, a victim, someone who desperately wanted to rebuild her family. According to Richard, that image could potentially help her position regarding certain financial arrangements and trust distributions connected to the divorce. I sat there silently listening. The more he talked, the angrier I became, because suddenly everything made sense. The sudden reappearance, the custody petition, the perfectly timed concern, the dramatic claims about wanting another chance. It wasn't about Emma. It wasn't about Noah. It was about money. Again, just like everything else in Melissa's life. Richard wasn't finished. "There may be another reason too." I rubbed my forehead. "Of course there is." His next sentence made my stomach turn. "There are family-related financial benefits she can't access without demonstrating a relationship with her children." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. The sheer selfishness was breathtaking. Those kids weren't people to her. They were assets, tools, opportunities, pieces on a board. I thanked Richard and ended the call. Then I sat alone in my kitchen for almost an hour, thinking about everything, thinking about how much damage one selfish choice had caused. The house was quiet. Emma was at a friend's house. Noah was at basketball practice. I just sat there staring at the wall, remembering. For 6 years, I'd watched those kids struggle. I'd watched them cry themselves to sleep. I'd watched them wonder why they weren't enough. I'd watched them blame themselves. And now I was learning that their mother's sudden return wasn't driven by love. It was driven by financial self-interest. Some betrayals are so deep they stop feeling shocking. They simply become exhausting. That evening, I told Emma and Noah about the phone call. Not every detail. They were still teenagers, but enough. Enough to understand the truth. Neither seemed surprised. That hurt more than anything, because children should be shocked when they hear something awful about a parent. Instead, they looked like people hearing confirmation of something they already suspected. Emma shook her head. "I knew it." Noah stared at the floor. "Me too." I looked between them. "You guys aren't upset?" Noah laughed quietly, a sad laugh. "We stopped expecting good things from her a long time ago." That answer stayed with me, because it revealed how much damage abandonment leaves behind. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's lowered expectations. Weeks passed, then months. Melissa tried contacting the kids several more times. The messages became increasingly emotional, then increasingly angry, then increasingly desperate. When guilt didn't work, she tried pressure. When pressure didn't work, she tried manipulation. One email blamed me, another blamed the court, another blamed circumstances. Yet somehow every explanation avoided the same thing: personal responsibility. Not once did she truly acknowledge her choices. Not once did she simply say, "I abandoned you. I was wrong. I'm sorry." Instead, every apology came wrapped inside excuses. And excuses don't heal wounds. Actions do. Eventually, the kid stopped reading the messages entirely. Life moved forward. Emma graduated high school near the top of her class. The ceremony remains one of the proudest days of my life. I still remember sitting in the audience watching her walk across that stage. For a few seconds, I wasn't thinking about abandonment, or court battles, or difficult years. I was thinking about how far she'd come. The scared 10-year-old girl standing in my driveway had become a confident young woman. When the ceremony ended, families rushed together for photographs. Parents hugged their children. Children hugged their parents. The parking lot was filled with celebration. Then Emma walked directly toward me. Not toward Melissa, not toward anyone else. Toward me. She wrapped her arms around my neck and started crying. I did it. You sure did. No, she shook her head. We did. That nearly broke me. Because she wasn't talking about graduation. She was talking about all of it. The entire journey. The hard years. The impossible years. The years when none of us knew if we'd make it through. A few feet away, Noah was grinning so hard his face looked sore. For the first time in a long time, life felt peaceful. Then came one final surprise. A few months after graduation, Melissa requested a meeting. Not through lawyers. Not through courts. Directly. At first, I wanted nothing to do with it. Neither did the kids. But after discussing it together, we agreed to hear what she had to say. Not because she deserved it. Because closure matters. Sometimes people need a final chapter before they can move on. We met at a small restaurant outside town. The atmosphere was awkward from the moment we arrived. Melissa looked older. Not physically, emotionally. I had clearly caught up with her. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Then she finally took a deep breath. I owe all of you an apology. The word sounded unfamiliar coming from her, almost uncomfortable. She looked at Emma, then Noah, then me. And for the first time in years, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Shame, real shame. Not self-pity, not excuses. Shame ruined everything. Nobody interrupted. Nobody rushed to comfort her. She continued. I kept telling myself I'd come back when things got better. Her eyes filled with tears. Then years passed. The table remained silent. I thought I had time. There it was. The lie people tell themselves when avoiding responsibility. Tomorrow, next month, next year, eventually. Eventually becomes never. Melissa wiped her eyes. I missed your childhoods. Neither child spoke. What could they say? It was true. She had missed them, and there was no way to get those years back. No apology could return a 10th birthday, or a school play, or a Christmas morning. Lost time stays lost. The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. There were tears, questions, painful truths, long silences, but there was no miracle reconciliation. This wasn't a movie. Real life doesn't work like that. The damage was too deep. The years were too many. Trust doesn't magically reappear because someone finally says sorry. By the end of the evening, something important happened. Not forgiveness. Not exactly. Something quieter. Acceptance. Emma accepted that her mother would never be the person she needed. Noah accepted that some questions would never have satisfying answers. And I accepted that I couldn't change the past, only appreciate what we built despite it. When we left the restaurant, Melissa remained standing in the parking lot, watching us walk away. For once, she looked completely alone. And the truth is, she was. Not because anyone punished her. Because actions create consequences. Sometimes those consequences take years to arrive. But eventually, they do. As we walked toward the car, Noah suddenly spoke. You know something? What? He smiled. We got lucky. I looked at him. Lucky? He nodded. Yeah. Then he pointed at me. Because when she left, we got you. I couldn't speak for a second. Neither could Emma. Then she wrapped an arm around my shoulder, and together we walked toward the car. Not uncle and niece. Not uncle and nephew. Not by that point. We were something stronger than that. We were family. The kind built through sacrifice. Through showing up. Through staying. And if there's one thing this entire experience taught me, it's that family isn't defined by who shares your blood. Family is the person who remains when everyone else leaves. The person who sits beside you during the hard years. The person who chooses you every day. Melissa gave birth to those children, but raising them, loving them, fighting for them, staying when life became difficult, that was my privilege. And despite all the pain, all the struggle, and all the betrayal, I wouldn't change a thing. Because the greatest thing my sister ever gave me was completely accidental. The day she drove away, she thought she was abandoning a burden. What she actually left behind was the greatest family I'd have ever asked for.